They tried to keep Drac dead for a decade until Trick or Treat resurrected him. Here's a look at the Trick or Treat Studios Dracula, Prince of Darkness, the 1/6 scale Dracula figure. The world's most evil vampire lives again. Trick or Treat Studios is proud to present the officially licensed Hammer Horror 1/6 scale Dracula figure from the Hammer Horror classic Dracula, Prince of Darkness. Featuring the likeness of the incomparable Christopher Lee as Count Dracula, the figure comes complete with 2 interchangeable heads, 5 hand options, and detailed wardrobe. As I now start to see the sun is rising, better get going right away with the tape measure before I burn Dracula to a crisp. Before we get a closer look, though, at the Hammer Horror Dracula from Prince of Darkness, I'd like to thank the folks over at Trick or Treat Studios that were kind enough to provide this sample we could have a look at. Hey, good news. If you're interested to get Dracula as part of your collection, he is available right now at their site for $199. If that also is maybe a little too steep, you can also go as well the route of 4 interest-free installments of around $17.96. Dracula is going to, though, stand at exactly 12 inches. You can see it for yourself, and that translates to a figure that's 30 centimeters tall. Well, I definitely think if you're going to be shooting this guy 6 times, you better hope that those bullets are made of silver. Here's what the figure low looks like with the recently looked at 1978 Dr. Sam Loomis from Halloween. In this case, you can see that the 2 characters are going to be standing at around the same size to one another, although Dracula, of course, is sporting a very long cape while not having a display stand. Sadly, Dracula, though, still manages to pack 3 interchangeable hands as well as a fiercer-looking head portrait, different from the one that's currently sitting on the dark shoulders of his. Well, by the way, looking at the accessories, we'll kind of start backing a bit by looking first at his hands. The hands themselves, one thing I really like about them is not only the fact that these relaxed hands, first of all, though, does have a ring you can see on his pinky, but also as well the way that they've colored these kind of give an off kind of sickly or dead complexion by the way that they've actually made them a little bit lighter here and then a little bit more pink around the knuckles. Very nice looking hands, though. These hands, by the way, as with most hands, always do pop out from the provided forearm pegs. Just swap them out for these. The hands that he actually, though, starts with, if I just can peel back the curtains, are actually kind of more gestured hands, more sinister looking hands. And it's just honestly a case of popping the hands off from the provided post, just like that. Take the hand that you want to use, so we'll use this one here, and just plug it in place. For the displaying of purposes, at least of the figure that I'm going to have here, I like more so the idea of displaying him kind of with those more kind of looming hands. He does also come included with this hand too, that almost for a second looks like it belongs to holding an accessory. As he comes with no other accessory than just these hands and then the alternate head portrait, I'm not really sure specifically what this hand was intended for. Perhaps down the road, as successful as this line has continued to be with the Halloween line that we've gotten so far, maybe you never know. They may also branch over to the idea of giving accessory sets for some of these horror releases from Hammer Films as well. This one also does, again, have that little ring there on his pinky finger. Nicely sculpted, though, a looking hand. And again, I just love the off-coloring that they've given to the complexion of the skin. And again, this hand would just swap out with, again, the hand that he has over there. The only other thing that Dracula also does possess is this head sculpt right here, which honestly, to be fair, is the head that he started with in the packaging, but I just wanted to revert things first. I thought the more approachable face was a better one to start the review with before we beeline it over to this one. In both cases, though, the head sculpt has been sculpted by Alexander Ray, and I think he's done a fantastic job of giving us what Christopher Lee would look like as Dracula. For those that are for sort of set the idea that Bela Lugosi is their go-to Dracula, needs to really venture off into the territory of Hammer, and you'll really experience a very ferocious vampire by the hands and played by, of course, the very talented Christopher Lee. This head sculpt, again, is just a case now, with the way they've sculpted the head and the neck is all one piece. So there's not going to be any articulation necessarily at play here with the way that the head would be rotate separately from the neck, but there is some decent articulation still to be had, despite for the fact that the neck and the head are all one piece. This whole time, of course, of talking about the one that has the fangs, getting a closer look at showing you guys what those fangs, though, look like. Very nicely sculpted, both on the top and the bottom. They've added really a nice little bit of sheen also to the tongue to make it given that look of wetness. The eyes, the way they loom down like this, I think is really one of the best things I like about this particular head sculpt. I feel like in a way that they probably could have made a little bit more grays in his hair, but this is fairly early into his career of doing the Dracula films that I feel like from a head sculpt standpoint, maybe they could have done, maybe as a later release, another version of Dracula where he's got a little bit more of the grays. But Dracula tends to have, though, more the widow's peak and all jet black. And again, it looks fantastic on this figure. Now, again, to swap the heads that he has, let's just grab the one that we're starting with here. Now, you can, again, see with this one, I really shouldn't have even said, like, grays. Dracula is always really known for having black hair. It's just the fact that as Christopher Lee got older, obviously some of that translated over to the Dracula films that he would be producing. But again, like, this is kind of more the nobler, stern look to his face. Again, a really good-looking head sculpt. The hardest thing, honestly, when it comes to these is deciding really which head sculpt I would want to have displayed with the figure. The thing, though, about it, though, is when you're changing out the heads, being the fact that they have such long necks like this, they're also quite rooted into the actual cavity of the head, or at least the body area here. So you sort of have to kind of peel away the curtains once again, kind of get in there with the collar, and then just yank the head off. The thing you really wouldn't want to do, though, is damage the collar of the shirt. Now, we'll get more to talking about the collar of the shirt and the rest of the outfit that he wears. But you can see down, though, deep in the darkest areas of your soul, there's the ball joint right there. And again, there's the provided hole on the bottom of his head. You're just basically going to take the head and pop it in place. And now, of course, you got the head swapped out. For the rest of his outfit, so he's basically got, of course, his jacket. I'm just going to kind of move everything out of the way here. He's got a really nice tailored jacket. One of the things I think that really Trick or Treat Studios have been knocking out of the park, not only from a head sculpt standpoint, but I think their outfits have been pretty good as well. Dracula, in this case, does actually have a jacket that it seems to be the case that it's snapped. If you're looking at it, though, for example, you could unsnap these. The hardest thing about them, though, is once you do unsnap them, they're always very hard to snap back in place. I'm just going to do the top one here so you can kind of see there's the shirt and tie underneath. But this would just be a case that you're going to take the top of the snap and snap it in place. You kind of have to really use, like, it's kind of hard to kind of get everything to line up here. And that just basically snaps in place. The one thing, though, about the cape, now, he has obviously a cape in the movie. He's going to have a cape in the figure here as well. The inside of the cape is kind of given a crushed, almost red velvet look to it. While the outer end of the cape, the back end, the side that you'll see from the outside of the figure, is, again, just a regular black material. The thing, unfortunately, about that, though, is by taking the inside of the cape and sewing it to the outside of the cape, there's a little more of a paddedness to it that kind of gives him slightly more of a cushiony kind of cape as opposed to something that's going to be conformed to his body. It's a very long cape, though, but it's the only thing I would say, like, I like the idea that they've actually sewn a different material, obviously, on the inside, giving the crushed velvet. The thing about it, though, is while sewing like I said, the inside to the outside, it does kind of give him a little bit more of a paddedness to the cape itself. But it does flow quite nicely over his body. You could, in theory, you could just untie this if you want to, but that's a very small knot. And I don't have the means by these hands to actually tie a better knot than this. So I'm going to just leave it in place. You could, if you wanted to, though, obviously bring back the cape. The cape does have its own independent collar. The collar itself, you could also pop up on the back there, too, which I haven't yet done, but you could do that also if you want to as well. He also has some decent tailored pants. We can also as well roll up the pants so you can see what the footwear looks like underneath. These are molded all in plastic, yet still possessing some decent articulation that we'll talk more about in a moment. It still manages, despite the fact that this is as high up on his ankles, it still succeeds in being able to ankle pivot up and down this way, and you can also rock it this way as well. Speaking, though, of the articulation, we'll go back to the head sculpt here. Now, we already looked at the fact that with the heads in both the cases, you can see like the neck and the head are all one piece. But even though, despite that, the head actually moves quite freely. There's nothing that seems to be restricting at all the head movement. So the head can look down, the head can look up. You can also move it back and forth as well. The upper torso, if I can get in there, is on an upper torso bulge, right? There seems to be as well a waist swivel. The legs, despite having all the layers of fabric over top of it, can easily be hinged out. So if you want to have like Dracula looking like he's lunging towards you, you can also do that as well. The arms do, again, have some decent freedom to them. There's a swivel there in the bicep. It is a little on the looser side, but not too bad at all. There's a double hinge also in the elbow. The hands do rotate all the way around. Oh, that's a good looking pose right there. Love that. The legs do split out. Yes, they do. There's also a swivel there on the top of the thigh, a double hinge possessed in the knee. And as we already looked at, if we just roll up the pant leg here, you can move the feet back and forth this way. You can also rock them back and forth. Yeah, the figure's decently posed. And again, when it comes to posing this guy, you can do really whatever you'd like. You can go the route of what I'm doing right now, of having the figure displayed with, again, like the vampire fangs, and of course him kind of with his arms out like this. Or if you want more the debonair version of Dracula, you could revert back to the way we started the review with, but having, again, like the neutral expression face here. In both cases, again, like the talented artist Alexander Ray has, I think, done a great job on giving us too. And also, I really also want to commend that Trick or Treat Studios opted to give this guy 2 heads instead of just the one, because ultimately they could have just released the figure in 2 variations, one as obviously the one that we started the review with, this head portrait, and then they could have released then a second version 2 Dracula, but they didn't do that. Even though the figure doesn't really have much in the way of accessories other than the count of 5 hands and 2 heads, doesn't come with a display stand. He doesn't have any other accessories, although I feel with the hand, one of the hands being sort of teased to the idea that maybe down the road we might get ourselves an accessory pack. This seems like really a hand that belongs to something. I'm not really sure what it is, but I feel like the hand does belong to perhaps something that's cooking up behind the scenes at Trick or Treat Studios for a release down the road. All in all, though, really big fan of this one. I like the way that this one turned out. If you're a big fan of yourself of the Hammer horror Dracula films with starring Christopher Lee, this is a must-have pickup for your collection. Now, Christopher Lee would go on to play Dracula in 9 separate films, starting first the 1958 Dracula film, going all the way, though, to Dracula and Son in 1974. Even though the 1974 film is technically outside the Hammer film universe, he would then still play the role, although a much older version of Dracula sporting some grays, which I did mention earlier in this review. We get, though, an all-jet black version of Christopher Lee from his second outing of Dracula from the 1966 film. I'm glad that they actually chose this version of Dracula, too. Dracula, Prince of Darkness, though I haven't really honestly seen all the 9 films that he appeared in. There was also as well, I think, a 1974 French parody, but all of the 9 films, I think I may have seen at least half of them. Christopher Lee is, though, the standout. Even though, I mean, a lot of people tend to consider Bela Lugosi to be the definitive Dracula, I would always really say, use the argument. You need to check out the stuff that Lee was doing during the Hammer film run. Once again, if you guys are interested, get this one for yourself. It is available as of right now. I think it's also a limited run. It's available right now at Trick or Treat Studios for $199. A big thank you once again to the folks over at Tots that provided this sample of the Prince of Darkness himself, Dracula, from the 1966 film that we had the chance to have a look in this review. Have you guys had the chance to pick up this one yet? Let me know down below in the comments section. And if you have picked them up, which head sculpt are you currently using on the shoulders of Dracula's body? If you, in the meantime, you guys did enjoy this video, I want to throw it a like. If you guys are loving the content you guys are seeing and would like to stick around for more, I will tell you this. We may be wrapping up things right now in Transylvania, but we may, though, be moving, though, over to Frankenstein's territory, as we will also be looking at the Curse of Frankenstein, the 6-scale figure also from Trick or Treat Studios. That's going to be coming up in an upcoming review. In the meantime, yes, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. In the meantime, yes, turn on the bell notification, and yes, in the meantime, making sure you're coming back regularly. As always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.